I hope you're not so sleepy and good. So I'm Frecia Mbugwa, and I'm the head of social media at Dentsu, and it's a pleasure to be here I hope you're excited.
Awesome. So when Rita called me and told me, Joel, you need to come and present at Social Media Week, I was like, oh, so what's the topic that I need to be presenting on? What's the theme? And we had a long conversation around it, and I was like, you know what? I know exactly what this market needs. And I think it's about time that we actually do have these honest conversations, because I believe brands tend to have a life outside online, right? So there's this narrative that's pushed online. The brand is positioned in such a dope way by, a very creative content agencies that are out here. But vitu kwa ground ni different, right? And so that's what I wanted to talk about today, really customer experience management in a digital economy. And I would like to welcome each and every one of you today to our world of possibilities. Now, there we go. I'll just give you a brief understanding of what we do, and maybe, I don't know whether that thing over there is going to hinder the content that will be shown. One of the things that we pride ourselves in at Dentsu is to actually come up with a very specialized unit in delivering different aspects of the digital economy. And so to just help you understand, I mentioned earlier on that I actually run Isobar, iProspect, and Merkle. iProspect, I was told it's this one, there. That's our performance marketing division. It's been around for the last, in Kenya, 4 years, globally since 1998. Isobar is our digital creative division. Merkle is our customer experience management division, and I'll be focusing a lot of my conversations around what's happening in that ecosystem. Posterscope is our out-of-home specialist, and Kara is our ATL specialist division. So we really combine specialist skills across the group. We deliver across Africa. And in Kenya, we have over 7 years of holistic solution experience that drives capability. And I want to believe that we actually do drive good culture as far as people are concerned, focusing on business outcomes and innovation. So very quickly, this is an invitation to the never before, and I want to think that the never before, as far as customer experience is concerned, is where we are really going to. And I would like to set a context for all of us here. Customer expectations are high today in the marketplace. Consumers today require you to be always on. You're expected to be connected, and you're expected to interact anytime, anywhere, on any device in a very seamless manner. But at the same time, the consumers today require you to act like you know them. And so nowadays, if I receive a message from Safaricom that tells me, there's a Tunukiwa offer, I always ask myself, am I a Tunukiwa customer? Do they know me? And it's the same thing, or because I'm no longer on MultiChoice, and then I receive a GoTV SMS. So, it's one of those things where I expect the brand to know who I am, right? And there are certain levers that can be pulled to get brands to that level. And I'm speaking to both agency partners, media partners, as well as brand custodians in this room. And then the other thing is that, customers expect us to make it easy for them. So customers expect, interactions, transactions, the point of interaction to be closer to the point of transaction in a very frictionless and a very fast way. And then there is need for instant gratification from them. So, you want me to act in a certain way, gratify me now, as the Nigerians would put it. And then, because we are living in in a world where people are connected, there's need for brands to be ubiquitous on social environments. And it's not just being there, but also customers developing an element of trust in those environments. And I think that's really key for what the customer expectations are high. Now, what I decided to then do is, based off of these expectations, look at what is it that the consumer trends look like that brands then need to adapt to. So it's a sort of like, this is what the consumer is doing, this is what brands are supposed to do. And the very first thing is, from a consumer standpoint, consumer data is really, really fragmented, super fragmented. I see my Twitter partner sitting in the room. My Twitter data is not aligned to my Facebook data, is not aligned to my LinkedIn data. It's the nature of the world. It's these walled gardens that exist. So that means that consumer data is just fragmented across different channels and sources. But from a brand standpoint, we're supposed to understand all these consumers, yeah? My Twitter and my LinkedIn and my Facebook and my Instagram is supposed to be counted as one, right? So brands are scrambling to get a better control over consumer identity. And identity management is going to be a very big part of agency models moving forward. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, consumers are demanding more transparency and control over their data. How many times have you gotten pissed off because you received those phony gaming ads where you're told, reply 1 if you accept, reply 2 if you dismiss, and then you don't even reply, you just cancel, right? And for a lot of consumers, it's becoming irking. So, we want control of our own data because it defines who we are in that virtual world. And at the same time, because of that demand of transparency over control of data, consumer privacy protections such as GDPR, the CCPA, are very limiting. And so from a brand standpoint, what's happening is that brands are increasing their own data privacy rules and focusing more on their first-party data. So they're saying, okay, we are going to align, and we're going to be, we're going to align with the government rules, and we're also going to instill our own set to ensure that consumer data is protected. So it's such a big deal, right? And then from a consumer standpoint, consumers are demanding more relevant and personalized brand interactions. From the brand standpoint, the brands are looking to actually develop data and analytics and digital marketing expertise in-house with the hope that they can be able to deliver those relevant and personalized brand interactions. But do you know why that is happening? Agency guys in the room? Do you know why that is happening? Because brands may not believe that agency partners are specialized enough to understand their own internal processes, and that's why they're building it in-house, which is not true, right? So it takes us to start trusting each other within the ecosystem before going out and engaging the consumer, and that's really going to form a lot of what we discussed today. Now, I then decided to look at, okay, are there companies out there that have figured this customer experience thing very well? And 2 companies came to mind. In the automotive sector, Tesla, right? And the best way to evaluate a company is through their share prices, right? So look at this. In 2015, VW stocks were at 120, right? Tesla was nowhere. It's just above 20, if I'm not wrong, right? And then look at that growth curve, and you look at what happened to VW. Now, do you know what triggered the drop in VW? Who remembers the Dieselgate scandal, when VW was accused of for consumers today, going green, preserving our planet, and at the same time, Tesla ramps up And suddenly, in 2020, last year, you're at par. Tesla has been around for how long? Anyone? How many years? Quite a while. VW? Even longer, right? So, I mean, you know, the success of data-driven, creative customer experience, the business outcomes are actually well publicized. And you look at the way Tesla does their communication, and you look at the way, you know, the way they've actually activated their own brand. But at the same time, you also have Apple. And Apple, the story of Apple is well publicized. You know, it outperformed the DAX 30. And it's now what? $1 trillion company, right? $1 trillion company. And it's just because of the way they leveraged off of the feedback from customers, creating a whole experience for their customers when it came to their product. Now, the reality of the matter is that we are living in a customer expectation economy. If we really want to succeed as brands, we need to do that. Now, believe it or not, before we were at personal selling, whereby it was one brand selling one-to-one. You remember those days when you'd have door-to-door salesman coming to say, hi, my name is so-and-so. They'll take their time, explain the product or the service. Britam still does it by the way in hospitals. They see you taking your child to hospital and then they'll say you want to buy education plans for your kids, right? That one-to-one selling. And even yesterday we talked about that word of mouth aspect of marketing, which is very strong, and it's still going to remain the strongest. But what happened over time is that you had what we called personalizations at scale, and what ended up happening is that brands decided to sell so much that the consumer became insensitive to the sales pitches. So you keep on getting bombarded with so much messages. You know, you get bombarded with so much that you just it becomes like wallpaper to you. Like, well, moving on swiftly. And that's where we are right now. And what we really need to get to is go back to personal experiences, but at scale. So how we actually drive those personal selling experiences at scale. And that's really where I see this going. And you know, within this experience economy that we're living in, there are three things that we'll need to focus on: moments, experiences, and relationships. And the best way to define this is that these expectations and personal experiences need to be met through authentic moments, experiences, and relationships. And that's the way I want to define it for us today. The ability to actually stitch individual moments together and to create experiences that over time build relationships and see how consumers respond to them in today's world. And then, as far as today is concerned, every touch point provides an opportunity and an obligation for brands to be able to sell to consumers. Now, most of you are wondering, then how does this work? So there are three things that I believe brands need to get to be able to actually get transformed to the next level. Number one is they need to actually understand the current consumer needs delivered through isolated moments, and setting up experience foundations is going to be important. And Freshia will walk you through how that can actually be done. And then the second thing is leverage on customer experience transformation. Really what this is becoming more personal and valuable to deliver a total customer experience. And then finally, customer experience management, and as a brand or as agencies, helping our brands to become an adaptive organizations to build longevity over time. Now, the way we do it is, number one, from an experience foundation standpoint, we try as much as possible to build capabilities. Now, capabilities are built in sessions like this. And I do hope that even from a foundational aspect, for this masterclass, you guys will be able to see how this actually comes to life. Now, number one, you are able to build capabilities that make these foundational principles work. Now, the second aspect of that, then, is to make it better. And the way we make it better is by integrating and optimizing each of those capabilities together. And then finally, what we then look at is we make it bigger. So once we've built the capabilities, we've integrated those capabilities in-house, the next thing we do is we make it bigger, and this is the place where we become an adaptive organization. And really, this is where we should be heading to. And the reason why I say that is because when you think of adaptive organizations, they're the brands that actually really focus on that aspect of customer lifetime value. So brands like Tello that are, coming into the marketplace today, really collecting the data that they have that I think is super valuable, you can actually be able to create your own customer experience, right? Yeah. And so the way we prioritize on this journey of that customer lifetime value is we focus on three main aspects. So number one, you have this curve, which is the expectation for any company that, when you start off, you'll grow, and then you'll plateau at a certain point as far as the customer lifetime value is concerned. The reality of the matter is that when you start, you experience a negative investment phase. So it's like whatever you're doing, you're not really making profit in the beginning, but you then break even and then you hit that, plateau point. Now, the way we think is we focus on starting off normally, but then prioritizing on quick wins. So, at a point where we start, we look at quick wins, and then look at experiences whereby if you have already started, you only reach a point where you invest money you invest money that is going to pay back the moment you go live. So you're not really experiencing a negative investment phase. But what then happens is that as you grow the brand, the opportunity cost that you incur there, the value is going to be lost through traditional delivery. So we try as much as possible to ensure that brands online get to deliver what they need to deliver in the most basic, in the most simple way possible, but very efficient as we go along. And then we focus then on continuous improvement. And that's really the path that an adaptive organization can actually take. Now, based on that, what we've seen, and I'll walk you through a case study right now, as far as digital economy is concerned, the adaptive organizations have outperformed their peers, 1.6 times more for brand awareness, 1.7 times more on customer retention, 16% more, 16x more on customer satisfaction rates, and then 1.4x as far as growth is concerned. Now, this is what the next 3 to 5 years is going to be determined. And if you're an agency sitting here, this is the adaptive model that we need to be taking forward. It's not just about buying ads on Twitter, because Twitter is here, and LinkedIn. It's not just about that. It's also about driving customer lifetime values at the end of the day. And really, that formula is what I personally want to be able to actually push within our industry today, because we are so focused, we have such a tunnel vision when it comes to the way we deliver for clients. We're not just delivering clicks, impressions. No, at the end of the day, what is the lifetime value that the customer would have ultimately? And this is what you're going to be doing through Merkle over the next couple of years. Now, I promised you guys a case study. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may have not seen it, but this is a very interesting case of a brand that came to us 3 years ago? Yeah. 3 years ago. You weren't with us 3 years ago. I don't know why I'm asking you. But anyway, 3 years ago, a brand came to us and told us we're receiving a bashing online because of the way our product has been positioned. And they did this through their own sentiment analysis, and we'll be diving deeper into that through this masterclass. And the solution that was put forward was based off of data that came through from sentiment analysis. And rather than talk about it, I'll play the video.
No three words sound better together. This was the case until 2017, when the Cadbury Martians landed in Nairobi City. Cadbury was using the Blizzard project.
What's up with the sound? Should we do it again? We good? We good? We go? Aye.
Cadbury, free, joy. No three words sound better together. This was the case until 2017, when the Cadbury Martians landed in Nairobi City. Cadbury was losing the Blizzard Rock to Kenyans and was losing it fast. Why? Kenyans didn't fancy the Cadbury Martians. Some even linked them to witchcraft, and others just didn't like the way they look. In a nutshell, the Martians were not spreading a lot of joy. But how does a brand turn all those negative Mashitani vibes and turn them into marvelous creations? Easy. We decided to give the Martians a second chance at a first impression by making them lovable, relatable, by making them authentically Kenyan. Cadbury presents the digital invasion. By invading popular digital spaces, we created social profiles for them on all social media platforms and made them regulars on trending topics, memes, and even KOT.
I think the sound is terrible. I'll just walk you through that case study. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened to the speakers. Murphy's Law happened. But yeah, as the case study plays in the background without the music and the voiceover, what we did differently was that we took the sentiment data and we looked at what people were complaining about the Cadbury brand. And it was basically these funny looking figurines that people said, hey, hizi ni mashetani, right? There's a lot of witchcraft that has gone into Cadbury because we've never seen anything like this as Kenyans. So globally it works. In our market it doesn't work. So client comes and says, yo, we really need you to assist us with turning around this brand. And so what we decided to do is we looked at the sentiment data and we realized that there's such a big misalignment with consumers not identifying with these figurines. And so the crazy idea that came up was, what if we make these figurines like Kenyans? Right? So we started saying, okay, we'll give them Kenyan personalities. We have one figurine that looks like, you know, in red shorts and whatever. We'll call him Swagi Mzito. We gave each of those figurines names, and then we went a step further and said, okay, now that they've gotten Kenyan personalities, let's push those personalities online. And when we started pushing it online, it didn't gain so much traction as we expected. And so we said, okay, let's layer on-ground experiences. And so during the on-ground BTL activations, what we had was we created this artificial intelligence tool that would match the personality types. You know the way you go and do your own personality tests? So you do your personality test, and then you see which figurine matches to you. And the moment we did that, that was an instant success. And so what we said we were going to do is we're going to take that experience online. So we created an artificial intelligence tool online also. And basically now on social, Facebook and Twitter, we're able to actually drive that. And it was insane because now suddenly kids want to know which character they are. Moms, as a result of their kids wanting to know which characters they are, they do that. And it ended up being a successful campaign. Now, initially it came to us with a negative sentiment score. We pushed that to, I think it was like 92% sentiment, positive sentiment score. And it was all because of sentiment data from consumers who complained about witchcraft online that allowed us to change that customer experience, right? Now, because of that, I felt like this case study was so good to set the stage for Fresh Air because what Freshia does is really understand what customer experiences look like online through search data, right? And so what we wanted to do differently this year is analyze the whole, am I allowed to cuss? The whole industry. So really understand which sectors had the best and the worst, customer experience. And so we analyzed a year's worth of data of consumer feedback around the world with some of the biggest brands, and really got to understand what that really looks like. So to create this customer experience through our customer experience tool, we looked at which experiences generated more interest, generated more sales, increased loyalty. And because of what happened in 2020, a lot of businesses were robbed of such opportunities. So even during that pandemic period, we wanted to take that into account. And then we wanted to understand what is it that brands can learn from each of those sectors to keep their customers happy. So I will invite Freshia to be able to walk you through this.
Thank you. So basically what we did, we analyzed over 130 million public mentions. And this was from almost 600 brands. And this was in 2020. So a bit of context in terms of the methodology. What we did, we built a query. So this query was mainly focused on pronoun words, personal words, words that we associate with that have a personal connection or signify some sort of experience with the brands that are being discussed. So we also included original posts and replies and excluded shared posts and tweets because some of these things tend to over-amplifying certain aspects of the data. So this was data that was collected from original tweets. And some of the platforms were like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, and several review sites. So of course, this enabled us to examine a number of things, and we're able to see which sectors exactly are generating the most positive customer experiences. We were also able to tell what are some of the dominant emotions that customers are sharing about brands in specific sectors, and we'll also see some of the key drivers, especially in terms of positive and negative customer experiences. And this will also be divided according to different sectors. And of course, the pandemic has impacted the customer experience across different sectors, and we'll be able to see how that impacted the data. So from a sentiment analysis categorization, how do customers talk about the experiences with different brands? So in terms of the entertainment industry, sorry, I don't know if, yeah. Yeah, so in the entertainment industry, you'll see that there was quite a significant positive sentiment. And of course, really closely were some industries like the hoteling industry, the automotive industry, fashion, retail, and consumer packaging goods. The consumer tech had a sort of a 50-50 negative, positive sentiment distribution. And then some of the worst performers, especially in terms of negative sentiment, meaning they had quite a bit of negative sentiment, were industries like airlines, pharma, health, and energy and telecom. In terms of emotions, some of the dominant emotions that customers were experiencing around brands in different sectors, they're usually divided according to several categories. Usually we divide them according to joy, fear, disgust, surprise, sadness, and anger. And you'll notice that while the airlines and telecoms are the ones, you remember in the previous slide, they had the most negative sentiment, they're also the ones that sparked the most anger. The consumer packaged goods and the food services and alcohol brands also tended to attract some of the highest portions of disgust mentions. We'll see a bit of context in that. And of course, the pharma brands also scored fairly highly when it comes to the level of disgust. And also they were some of this, it was the industry that had the most fearful mentions. Okay, let me rephrase that. The emotion category in that particular industry was categorized as an expression of fear. So people are fearful. People in that industry are fearful. And we'll see why they're actually fearful. So maybe just to dive in, to take a deep dive in some of these industries. For example, the airline industry, what really sparked joy? And in this case, people were expressing that need to travel. They missed traveling, and they expressed this anticipation to travel once the restrictions were loosened. What sparked anger in this area, you may ask? So in this particular industry, there was, of course, the concern of refunds. So there were so many mentions. There were over about 275,000 mentions, especially with regards to refunds. And this was specifically directed to airlines. So you can tell that anything around money especially, and refunds in this particular sector, was a really touchy subject, especially when you're living through a pandemic. So in the alcohol industry, of course, a moment of joy was that people are looking forward to times when they would reconnect to their family and friends. Remember, with the restrictions, there was limited movement, and of course, limited, coming togethers and all. Birthdays, to be specific, were a key topic in the positive sentiment. People were actually angry, especially around April, around mid of the year. And they were specifically angry because the whole pandemic, the whole situation, caused that shift in their drinking habits. And of course, there was this expression that it has now become boring. We associate alcohol with a lot of, social gatherings. So now that that is not there, then you no longer enjoy your favorite drink. So that was one of the points of concern in the alcohol industry. In the automotive sector, of course, people were excited to buy their dream car. And the positive emotions, of course, here were associated with that excitement, the ability to buy your own car. In terms of anger, of course, there is the service aspect of it. So the post-purchase tended to be more negative, especially to these particular brands that are in this sector. So in these conversations, you'll notice that service centers and consumer service were key focus areas. So, of course, the experience it needs some improvement. Is it moving? In the consumer tech, I've not moved it. Oh, yes. In terms of the consumer tech, so what sparked joy in this particular sector? Of course, there was a lot of gaming now that people were the movement was restricted and people were now indoors. So there was obviously that excitement. The console consoles were in huge demand, especially from the beginning, at the beginning of the pandemic. And that time, we also noticed that we got the most complaints in terms of smashed smartphone screens, you're crashing games. Of course, data is at such a high demand during that time. So you would expect that these are some of the complaints you're getting. And of course, this just goes to show that there are plenty of lessons that you can learn from examining these kinds of online conversations, especially relating to these products. In the consumer packaging category, people were happy. People are especially happy about feeling clean. Before, you were always outside, but this time now you have the chance to declutter years of hoarding, So that was a positive point of conversation. And of course, for food and beverage brands specifically, we saw a lot of appreciation for birthdays, holidays, Christmas. Holidays were a really good place to just, talk about some of these brands. People were especially angry about disliking the taste of certain products. Now they're keener on such things. You're no longer working from the office, and there's less distractions from, the commuting and all. So that's why you see people are especially angry about now what detergent you're using in their home and so on. So, of course, this basically just encourages us to keep an eye on some of these conversations. They look like small things, but are actually things that can influence customer purchase. So in the entertainment industry, this industry specifically was quite interesting. And this is especially with reference to streaming sites, yeah? So people are really excited about certain shows, certain episodes. It's the whole reason why some things are trending during that time. And you'll see that competition at this particular point, especially between some of these streaming services, was quite high. And this, in turn, this kind of competition, you'll notice that subscriptions, people will complain also about subscriptions, and this is what forms the negative aspect of this particular industry. So a lot of people are complaining about the prices, they're complaining about the offers, and of course this drives entertainment brands to pick this as an insight and position themselves as the desired entertainment or streaming provider that gives the most value for money. Yeah. So the good news is that this, of course, the competitiveness in this particular industry means that people will now create better content, specifically these entertainment brands, and the quality therefore improves. All this to the benefit and the experience of the customer. So last but not least, in the financial sector, insurance policies, insurance brands got the highest percentage of positive mentions. Of course, with the presence of the pandemic, that is one of the things that became a really key topic of discussion. Which particular service is meeting my needs, is meeting my family needs? Which particular insurance product is best suited for such a time when there's a pandemic, and so on. What sparked anger? Of course, certain things in this case was over the phone means of communicating with the bank here. People complained about the fact that customer care in this particular area reduced in quality. Remember, movement has been reduced, branches are closed, and with all these restrictions, we're more likely to now call customer care for assistance. And this in itself, people felt this particular need was not met to the satisfaction that customers wanted. In the telco industry, this is of course a touchy subject for all of us. So telecom companies, you'll notice that positive mentions were a bit low, but then again, we did see quite a number of products springing up. So products that help support teachers and schools to encourage that online learning and so on. So customer care, yes, obviously this was also a pain point because now you have this huge traffic coming from customers complaining and requiring assistance at a time when they're not able to move around. Finally, in the retail sector, people are joyful about reading books. So if people had a hobby to read, this was the best time for them, and this is what happened, especially now that they're stuck at home. And we also found that there are a lot of mentions around sites that sell gifts and such items. So they got a lot of promotion because people were keen to now, I can't come see you, but I can send you a package to make you feel better. What sparked anger in such instances? You'll find that obviously a lot of people had an issue with certain items being out of stock. You're not able to run to the retail store to get this particular item. Delivery is slow, or the delivery pickup points, are not as you would like, yeah? So this, of course, led to a lot of backlash against many retailers, as opposed to actually the brands that were selling some of these products. So this just goes to show about how these things that look small, yeah, when we look at them, but actually have a huge impact, especially on brands and what they're selling to consumers. So I'll hand over to Joel to take it from
Thank you so much. A hearty hand clap for her. I don't know whether you realize this, but this is your first time on stage.
Kinda.
Kinda, yeah. This is the first time on stage with me. So I'm just kidding.
I only present I presented online mostly.
Oh, online, yeah, Zoom calls. But yeah, I mean, really proud of the work that is ongoing right now. And with people like Fresher leading that data gathering, analysis, especially from a consumer standpoint, is really great for where this industry needs to grow. Especially, you know, we've discussed quite a bit around, you know, the future of what marketing looks like, digital marketing. And it's not just digital marketing, but data-driven digital marketing. And I think as far as, you know, managing consumers' expectations in a digital economy, scratch that. In the consumer's attention economy is going to be really, really key for brands moving forward. Now, all this data, you may ask, has been collected you know, through our customer experience tool. If you want to learn more about it, I'll ask you to get in touch with Fresher or myself. Can run a quick report for you. It's really, really, really affordable. And is Rita here now? Yes. For a one-time offer, this is where I do a call to action. For a one-time offer, you'll be given on these reports that would be pushed out as we go along. Come on, give me a hardy clap. Yeah. All this is brought to you by Merkle. If we can play the last video, we'll really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Countries across Europe, coronavirus restrictions.
Some restrictions are sparking protests.
These doctors in Barcelona are understaffed. Businesses barely back on their feet after the first wave, now closed for a month.
Now this revolution, which was set to happen in retail over 5 to 10 years, is happening in the span of just 5 to 10 weeks.
Other companies to look at Amazon and see us as a standard bearer for obsessive focus on the customer.
We're in the economy of customer expectations.
Every touch point represents both an opportunity and an obligation.
We do, we dream, we deliver. Thank you so much for your time. Who do I hand over to? Or questions, or I stay here?
I have a question. I like how when you...
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Joel. And you are?
Ziana Muhammad.
Nice to meet you. Now go ahead.
We're even connections on LinkedIn.
Sorry, say that again?
We're even connections on LinkedIn.
I guess it's the mask, I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a question. Ziana Muhammad, Kenya Bureau of Standards. I liked when you began the presentation and you talked about you may push a great narrative on digital or out there, but kwa ground vitu ziko different. How do you, and I'd imagine this is a similar problem that many, would I say, customer-facing teams or marketing teams or communications teams face within their organizations to rally the entire organization to be speaking and articulating a certain vision or language, whereby when you're having this amazing, say, digital team or communications team or marketing team selling what their organization is, and then comes and is faced by a very moody receptionist or a very rude finance guy and things like that, how do you articulate it? Maybe would I say to the leadership or infiltrate the entire organization so that qua ground and what is being said out there is tallying?
Lovely question. This is how I do it. I try not to have the conversation with the marketing director because this is a C-level conversation. So whenever we take this transformational agenda into organizations, we don't address it. I mean, it will be brought up at that level, but the way we bring it up is we streamline it to be presented at a C-level so that it becomes a top-down agenda. Now, the reality of the matter is that every single CEO in this country that I've talked to already sees the need to transform their organizations and become adaptive for the future. And for most of our clients who we've had these conversations, the relationship is actually starting at that level. And it then permeates downwards. So more often than not, if it comes top down, then it's pushed because then suddenly it becomes, oh, it's the KPI of the customer service director to ensure that the customer service representatives in a company act in a certain way. And obviously there's a lot that goes into it because, you know, there's training that needs to be invested in. There's a change in the systems and infrastructure to speed up processes. Automation is going to be a big part of that conversation. So all this needs to happen at C-level. And once you paint the picture of what the organization can look like in the future, and I mean, I think you saw the numbers that I showcased there. In most of these presentations, we will walk them through this is what it really means, so that it stops becoming a marketing conversation and becomes an organizational conversation. I hope that answers your question. Good.
Joel. Hi, Joel. Hi, Freshia. I'm Joy Wahome. I have two questions. So between analytics and social listening, which of these two allows you to gauge your consumer intent effectively? And does, for the second question, does fan growth drive brand commitment? If your brand is growing, does that mean that the fans are committed to your brand, basically? Yeah.
That's a very good question. Can I take that one? Okay. So, to your question, they actually work together. You cannot work in silos. You actually have to work together. So I'll paint for you a scenario. You have a bank. I'm a customer to a bank. I go and search, and I search closest ATM near me. Closest NCBA, ABSA, whatever ATM near me, right? From an analytics standpoint, that will automatically be picked, right? Yeah, so you'll go and look at the branch locators, blah, blah. But if the brand has smart people behind it, then what they should be doing is that rather than going to a branch locator sitting on a website, you actually have that sitting on the search results. You understand? So that's a customer experience tactic that you can actually push. And then from a sentiment standpoint, you then start looking at conversations that would be happening around the brand's ineffectiveness on certain branches. So more often than not, people go on Twitter to complain. True? So more often than not, people will go on Twitter and complain. In this instance, I went to this and this branch, and I received really bad customer service, right? So the way you use that data to improve your organization is to take such complaints, and then, because sentiment analysis can be location-based, you just narrow down the location in which the tweet is coming from, and you can then easily take it up. And more often than not, what we see, in Kenya specifically, a customer service representative will tell you, let's slide into the DMs and deal with this there, and we apologize in public, but we'll deal with you personally. That's what tends to happen, right? So in this instance, what I'd always say is that you cannot separate the two. They actually work together. And the secret behind it, I mentioned this earlier on around the walled gardens for Twitter, Facebook, and whatever. Identity management is going to be a very big part of what we do for brands moving forward. Cool. I hope I've answered your question. Yep.
Caroline Barire. Hi, Joel.
Sorry, where are you?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Hi.
So, hi. I'm Caroline Barire. That was a nice presentation. I've picked up a few learnings. So I have a few questions. I think to start off, we can all agree that the future of marketing is human first or customer first, data-driven and experience-driven. So I wanted to know the tool that was in use to gather the data for the social mentions from the different brands. And I believe that was first-party data. So how do you aggregate first-party, second-party, third-party in data? If I believe I believe as an adaptive organization, as you've mentioned that you've invested heavily in data gathering, and how do you aggregate, how do you apply it across the different digital channels that you use in the organization to communicate to your consumers real time? And then which tools do you also use integrations, offline data and online data? Are there tools in use to integrate that?
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so your first question. The customer experience tool that we used actually did not pull first-party data. We looked at it industry-wide, so it was pulling second-party and third-party data. So it crawled through all public posts, all public mentions, all pages of all brands that we wanted to analyze from, and then we aggregated that data, and that's what she presented. What brought joy? It was joy and anger, yeah. What triggered joy, what triggered anger at that level. So, I mean, there are tools in place that you could actually look at. This is a tool that was actually built by a third party that was customized to our needs in this market that we wanted to be able to run with. And we can actually have a conversation around that later on. So that's first question. Second question, are there tools that merge offline data and online data? No. What does that, though, are data warehouses. So I think more often than not, we've seen people pulling in data from Excel into a central data repository that you can actually be able to have, and then you're pulling in your online data. One such example that would do that for you is Google's Data Studio. That's just an example. The problem with Data Studio is when you're putting in so much data in there, it takes too long to visualize. So it becomes a very painstaking process for a brand manager or a campaign manager or a social media manager trying to pull all this data. That and the fact that you need a bunch of connectors to be able to do that. And I'm so sorry for getting technical right now. I'm such a data nerd that I get excited when I'm talking about it. However, we do have solutions whereby we custom build warehouses that can actually be able to house all this data. So if you're an above the line TV, radio, digital planner, you can actually get that data fed into a data warehouse, and then it's crunched together with all the other sources of data without necessarily having the lagging effect that you'd have when the data is visualized. So that's one. Number two, the second part of the second question said, what tool do you use to aggregate first-party, second-party, and third-party data, if I'm not wrong? So that would be generally a DMP solution. So there are so many that are out there, and I don't want to get into the DMP conversation right now because we can go on and on and on. But you could look at players like Adobe, players like Salesforce, players like Latomi, who have, different DMP offerings that you can have. Now, I know a bunch of DSPs have come into the market and say that they have their own DMPs. Those are their own custom DMP builds that they use. So, depending on what exactly you want to achieve, you can use differently. Personally, I never go to client and say, you need to use a certain DMP. I ask client, what is it that you're comfortable using based on your IT and data policies that you have within the organization? Cool. Any other question? Yes, there.
Hi, my name is Charity. There's something you mentioned and said that in most situations, we try and cover the situation. Say I'm a client, I go on your social media page and maybe give a bad review of something that happened to me. Most of the time, you'll tell me on the comment section, so sorry about that. Can you kindly give us your number on our inbox section? From a professional point of view, how would you go about it? And you delete, most of the time you end up deleting that comment.
I never delete stuff, but anyway. Fresha, why don't you answer that? Because you've dealt with this a lot.
So, I think...
Oh, wait, can I add another aspect to that question? So, you acknowledge the problem and then you slide into the DMs, and then you have so many people complaining about the same problem, and then you resort to using influencers. Now answer. Yeah.
We will not name names when it comes to brands that do that, but from a professional point of view, I always believe it's good to address the query on the public comments, something that people can see. It tends to reduce the number of people asking the same question and coming to your DMs. And of course, there's there's an aspect of transparency, which contributes obviously to the fact it just shows that you're a credible brand. You're willing to put it out there. That yes, you're experiencing this issue, and this is how it's sorted out. And I would say the only instance where I believe you should take it to the DMs is if you require that person to share personal information. That is the only time that you should drive it to the DMs. Otherwise, address it on the public comments. Take it head on, so that everyone can see that you're also a bold and credible brand. And trust is really the foundation of customer experience.
It always starts with trust, to be very honest. And I know it's such a tough conversation to have because you have a C-level executive breathing over the directors who then go to the agency and tell the agency you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it just becomes a whole convoluted situation. But the reality of the matter is that if we take a step back and own up to what the issue is and address the issue in a public domain setting, then questions about that tend to reduce over time because you've addressed it there. You've acknowledged, okay, we messed up. These are the remedial actions that have been taken. This is the progress of what you're doing. And I'll go a step further. I don't know whether you noticed on the video when Jeff Bezos was having an interview and he said he wants Amazon to be a customer-obsessed company. Right? You're so obsessive about the customer and the needs that the customer has that that's all that matters. Do you know when that was done? In 2004. And we're talking about customer obsession now. That means it goes a long way to say that, you know, it's actually true. These are the fundamentals of businesses. We're not, yes, we came from selling one-to-one selling, where it was one-on-one conversation, and I trust you to have my best interest at heart, to one-to-many selling, whereby we dropped the value of the sales and we become insensitive. We've become so insensitive to sales pitches and anyone who's selling, or the title of a salesman, to one-to-one selling, but now doing it at scale. That's really the journey that we need taking as businesses. Any other question? Yes.
Oh, thank you. I think what you're saying is really, really interesting, especially on the customer angle. But I think in a room possibly full of some HR professionals, what really interested me is turning it on its head slightly and thinking of customers as candidates. So I just would love to hear you elaborate a bit around how maybe we could use your data to really understand employer branding sentiment and how we can use that extremely competitive in creating employer branding content strategy with that and the needs of our candidates.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's definitely possible because you're now looking at the candidate as a potential consumer. And then whatever you're working, it's the same principle really that's followed. And very happy to have that conversation because all we need to do is just tailor the individual queries. The same way we did it for the individual category segments that we had, we can just do the same for that. Heck, we can even go down to individual organizations that you'd be working with. Cool. Anything else? Lovely. I don't know about you guys, but I've had so much fun. I don't know whether you had fun.
I did.
Yeah?
I did.
You guys were such a great audience. A hearty clap for yourselves. Thank you so much. We'll be around in case of anything. I don't have my business cards. Let me just say it now. We can collect on LinkedIn. Joel Rao, the only. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who's next? Moses.